An envelope arrives on a Tuesday. No return address, no name. Inside a card, a phone number, and 3 words, "You've been selected." By the time most people receive that envelope, they've already passed 8 months of screenings, psychological evaluations, polygraphs, conversations with handlers who never gave their real names. The envelope isn't a surprise. It's a confirmation. You dial the number. A voice tells you to be at a specific parking garage in Langley, 6 a.m., Thursday. You show up at 5:47. Here's what that envelope actually means and what it costs. Today, we're going inside the structure of a CIA-Mossad joint intelligence operation rank by rank. Not the Hollywood version. The operational version, how the hierarchy actually works, what each level actually does, and what it quietly takes from the person doing it. 8 levels, 19 years. One question underneath all of it: at what point does the mission stop being something you do and start being something you are? Level 1, the asset. You don't have a rank yet. You don't have a code name. What you have is a handler named Marcus who calls you Sport, and a cover story that places you at a mid-tier State Department contractor. Your job, your entire job, is to listen. You attend academic conferences, embassy receptions, think tank luncheons. Your handler picked your shirt $200 because it signals mid-level ambition without telegraphing money. You order the second cheapest wine on every list. You remember names. You file reports on index cards using a cipher that takes you 40 minutes to decode in week 1 and 11 seconds by week 3. You are, in the language of the trade, a human censor. The first time you meet a Mossad officer face-to-face, it's at a coffee shop in Vienna. Her name is Dina. She's compact, precise, and holds a rank equivalent to a senior GS-15, though you won't know that for another year. She explains the operational relationship between the CIA and Mossad in exactly 4 sentences. We share targets. We share methods when it benefits both parties. We do not share sources. If you reveal a source, Israeli or American, this conversation will be the best thing that happens to you this year. She pays cash. She leaves. You file the report. You note her posture, her exit route, the denomination of the bill. That night, Marcus calls and says one word: good. That single word keeps you functioning for 3 weeks. On paper, you earn $62,000. Consulting fees. The real number dispersed through a shell company in Cyprus is closer to $91,000. You're told not to spend it differently. The point isn't the money. The point is building the legend, making the cover story true through repetition and behavior. You feel useful, important, like you're part of something that matters. You have no idea what you've walked into. Level 2. The trainee operative. 6 months in, you're moved to a training facility outside Tel Aviv. The Israelis call it Midrasha. You call it the place where you stop sleeping. This is where the movie version of intelligence work gets quietly dismantled. No gadgets, no cue. What there is: a retired Shin Bet officer named Avi who makes you interrogate the same fictional subject for 6 hours until you find the crack. In this case, a contradiction about train schedules. There's a former Mossad Katsa, which is their term for case officer. The people who actually run human assets on the ground, who teaches you how to build genuine rapport with a target in under 4 minutes. Not fake rapport that works because targets are trained to detect the fake version. There's a weapons qualification. You pass on your second attempt. Here's what you actually learn about the joint operational structure. On the American side, a CIA station chief holds nominal authority. On the Israeli side, authority runs through Mossad's Tzomet division, their department for running human intelligence networks. In a joint operation, these 2 chains sit in parallel. In theory, they coordinate. In practice, decisions are made by whoever has better ground intelligence that day. And philosophically, these 2 agencies don't operate the same way. The CIA runs on process, documentation, escalation thresholds. The Mossad runs on what they call chutzpah, calculated boldness, that sometimes looks from the outside like operational recklessness. The CIA wants 80% intelligence confidence before moving. The Mossad will move at 60. This friction process versus instinct caution versus speed will define every major decision you make for the next 19 years. Your first real operation is a dead drop in Budapest. You retrieve a package from behind a loose brick in a Buda district wall at 11:40 p.m. Inside a USB drive and a list of 3 names. You don't know whose names they are. You deliver the package to a contact at a hotel bar. He tips his glass slightly to the left, the signal, and you walk out into the cold. You feel something you can't name yet. You'll understand it later. It was complicity. For now, it feels like competence. Level 3, Junior Case Officer. You have a desk now, a codename Cardinal, 2 assets of your own. One is a mid-level functionary in the Iranian Trade Ministry. The other is a Lebanese academic who doesn't know he's simultaneously reporting to 2 intelligence services. That second fact is a logistics problem. It's also a moral one, though you're getting better at not calling it that. The operation has a name: Operation Cedar Ridge. You know only your slice of it. This is deliberate. Compartmentalization means that if you're ever caught surveilled or compromised, you can only give up so much. The architecture protects the whole by limiting what any single person knows. You find this simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Your Mossad counterpart is a man named Aitan, 34 years old. He has the eyes of someone who has been lied to professionally for a decade and built a working system around it. He teaches you something the CIA training didn't cover. The most effective lies contain exactly one true emotional detail. Give them something real, one thing. The rest can be construction. You use this, it works. Then your Lebanese asset starts missing check-ins, 3 in a row. Protocol says you escalate to your handler immediately. You don't because you think you can fix it yourself. You spend 9 days running a parallel communication track trying to re-establish contact quietly. On day 10, you escalate. Marcus dresses you down for 6 minutes on an encrypted line. You don't argue. The asset is extracted. He was under active surveillance. If you'd waited 48 more hours, he would be dead. You carry that. You put it in a compartment in your mind and close the door. You're getting good at that. Level 4. Field operative. Cardinal is retired. You have a new code name. You're not allowed to like it, so you don't let yourself. You're running 3 simultaneous operations across 2 continents. Marcus has been promoted, which in this world means he's moved further away from you, not closer. Your new handler communicates exclusively through a messaging protocol that auto-deletes in 90 seconds. 3 years in, you can make an honest operational assessment of yourself. Strengths pattern recognition. Source cultivation. The ability to separate emotion from decision without losing the human signal that makes you effective, because pure cold logic doesn't work in human intelligence. People aren't data. You understand this. Weakness, you sometimes trust the intelligence over the relationship. Aitan still corrects you on this. Aitan is your closest colleague. You won't call him a friend. Friendship implies a transparency that neither of you can afford. Cedar Ridge has expanded. What started as surveillance of a specific weapons procurement network has evolved into an influence operation targeting policy-level actors across 3 Gulf states. The CIA's Near East Division runs the strategic layer. Mossad's Tzomet runs human intelligence. You operate in the seam between them, which means you technically answer to both chains simultaneously and practically to neither. The operational budget you control now exceeds $2.3 million annually. You don't touch it personally. You move it. You authorize it. You decide where it goes, and nothing gets questioned as long as the intelligence holds. You authorize a payment of $180,000 to an asset. His information identifies a weapons procurement route. The route is interdicted. 3 people are arrested in Rotterdam. You never know their names. You don't ask. Level 5. Operations Officer Senior Grade. The promotion brings a new problem. You now supervise 4 junior officers who think the way you thought at Level 2. You see yourself in them clearly. This is uncomfortable. You're stationed in Tel Aviv with dual accreditation CIA liaison to Mossad for Cedar Ridge and 2 related operations. You have a flat you cover identity rents, a vehicle registered to a company that doesn't exist, a SIM card you change every 11 days. You've stopped noticing these details. They're just the furniture of your life now. The operational differences between the 2 agencies have sharpened for you. The Mossad will run an operation at 60% confidence. Sometimes 60% is right. Sometimes it costs something irreplaceable. An operation you approved loses an asset in Beirut, not captured, killed. The debrief takes 4 hours, 7 people in the room. The formal conclusion: the operation was sound and the intelligence failure was a variables problem, a change in the target security posture that no model could have predicted. The conclusion is correct. You know this. It helps almost nothing. You write a cable at 2:17 a.m. recommending a procedural adjustment. The adjustment is implemented. You go to sleep at 4. You wake at 7:30 and do it again. The people at your level don't discuss what things cost them. That conversation doesn't exist. You have quarterly sessions with a CIA psychologist. You tell her carefully selected truths. She signs your fitness evaluation. You return to work. Your father calls on a Sunday. You talk for 11 minutes about his garden and a film he's watched. You say nothing about your week. He says he misses you. You say you'll visit soon. You won't visit soon. Level 6 Senior Intelligence Officer Joint Task Force. You're in the room now. Not the room that people imagine when they think about intelligence, not the dramatic situation room with screens and generals. The room that actually matters is smaller. A conference table, 8 people, a Mossad deputy director, a CIA Near East Division chief, 2 analysts who understand your targets better than anyone on the ground, and you. Your title is Senior Intelligence Officer Cedar Ridge, Joint Task Force. The title appears in 0 government directories. You have authority to approve operational activity up to a defined threshold without escalation. Above that line, you make the recommendation and the deputy directors decide. In practice, because your recommendations have been correct more often than not, the gap between your recommendation and the final decision has almost entirely closed. This is how power actually accumulates in intelligence work, not through title, through track record. There's a concept in Israeli military and intelligence doctrine called Tohar Hanashek, the purity of arms, the principle that operations must maintain ethical constraints even under pressure. It's genuinely held by people you deeply respect. It also exists in permanent tension with what an operation at this scale actually requires. You've made peace with that tension. You don't call this cynicism. You call it calibration. You receive intelligence, a secondary asset. A Jordanian official, mid-level, 3 children, a man you've never met, is likely to be identified by a hostile intelligence service within 96 hours. Extraction is possible, but it will compromise a separate operation. The calculation is written out explicitly in a cable that 11 people will read. You make the call, he's extracted. The other operation loses 6 weeks of progress. The Mossad deputy director calls it the correct decision with an unfortunate cost. The CIA division chief says, noted, and moves on. You sit with it for one evening, then you move on too. This is the job. You've been doing it long enough that this statement no longer requires justification. That's how you know who you've become. Level 7, Deputy Director Special Operations Liaison. There's a specific quality to power at this level that no briefing document prepares you for. It's quiet. You don't move through the world visibly. There are no titles on your communications. The people who know your actual role can be counted on 2 hands, and several of them work for a foreign government. Your official CIA designation is a GS-15 administrative position that no one questions because no one looks. Cedar Ridge has been formally concluded and informally continued under a different name. The successor operation runs cleaner because of the infrastructure Cedar Ridge built. Infrastructure you built. This is a fact you hold privately without ceremony because there is no ceremony for this. Your work now isn't running field officers. It's shaping the conditions under which field officers operate. You sit across from policymakers who don't know what you know, and you advise them in ways that guide their decisions without ever revealing the intelligence architecture underneath. This is influence at the structural level. It's the most powerful position you've ever held. It's also the most isolated. Eitan holds the equivalent position on the Israeli side. You have dinner in Jerusalem once every 3 months. You talk about operational principles and Middle Eastern geopolitics. Once briefly, you talk about whether either of you would have made different choices. He doesn't answer directly. You respect that. You're earning $340,000 a year from sources you won't enumerate here. You own a house in Virginia under a different name. You rent an apartment in Herzliya where you stay 4 months of the year. You have a relationship with a woman who knows your cover story, not your real one. You've told yourself for 2 years that you'll fix this. You haven't fixed this. Here's what this level actually costs. It isn't fear. You passed through fear years ago. The cost is continuity, the slow erosion of whoever you were before all of this. You don't mourn that version of yourself exactly. He wouldn't have been capable of what you're capable of now, but you notice his absence. Level 8, the architect. You don't have meetings anymore. You have conversations, carefully arranged, selectively attended, operationally consequential in ways that won't appear in any record for 20 years, if ever. 19 years. Your name does not appear in connection with Cedar Ridge or its successors in any document that will be declassified in your lifetime. The intelligence officers running current operations know your work the way architects know load-bearing walls, not always by name but by the structure they live inside. What that structure produced, over 19 years, the interdiction of 5 major weapons procurement networks. The cultivation of 11 long-term assets who shaped policy across 4 countries, 2 diplomatic outcomes that the public record attributes to entirely different causes. You don't say this to anyone. There is no one to say it to who would understand its full weight. Your CIA position, a senior advisory role, 6 figures, no operational responsibilities as cover. What you actually do is consult on the structural architecture of joint operations at a level where the question isn't whether to run a specific operation. It's whether the conditions for an entire category of operations should exist. This is a different kind of power. It doesn't feel powerful. It feels like being a very precise instrument that only a small number of people know how to use. Eitan retired 8 months ago. His successor, a woman named Yael, is sharper than Eitan was at her equivalent career point. She reminds you of yourself in ways that are professionally useful and privately unsettling. You had dinner with Marcus last year. First time in a decade. He's 63. He told you he'd watched you become something he didn't have a word for. He said it with something between admiration and concern. You thanked him. You paid for dinner. You drove home alone. The moral architecture of your career is not something you audit anymore. You made those decisions. You made them with full information, full authority, in service of objectives that were real and by the measures that matter achieved. The cost, the assets, the relationships, the version of yourself you filed away in a mental compartment 20 years ago. That cost is structural. You know this. You've known it for a long time. The thing no one tells you about this level, the thing that can't be transmitted in any training document, is that the isolation is not painful. That's what makes it final. Painful things can be treated, addressed, changed. This is simply the climate of your existence now. Closing the cycle. Somewhere in Langley, a 27-year-old analyst has just been handed an envelope. No return address, a phone number, 3 words. He's been preparing for this for 2 years, the interviews, the screenings, the handlers who never gave their real names. He thinks this is the beginning of something. He's right. He thinks he understands what he's walking into. He doesn't. He thinks there's a version of this, some version where the mission and the person stay separate, where you can do this work and remain unchanged by it. He'll learn. He shows up at 5:47. The real question was never how far he'd climb. It's how much of himself will still be there when he does.